And we are live. Hi, everybody. This is Jack McCullough on LinkedIn Live. Thank you all for joining us today. Really excited by my friend and guest today. Scott is someone I've described multiple times as a serial CFO. Scott, this is your fifth time in the big chair, right? Is that correct?
It is. Yeah, it is. Fifth time. Exciting.
Yeah. And we were just chatting before. Even though we both sort of live near your company, we weren't familiar with it, but it's maybe one of the most exciting stories, not only in Massachusetts, but period. But
it is the best kept secret in Boston, and it's time that we change that. It's a terrific company, so I'm happy to be here.
Yeah, because when I think of the companies you've picked, you've picked some great ones, and I hadn't heard of this one until you reached out. It was like, oh, this is one to keep my eye on. And then it's like, whoa, what's going on here? Yeah. But I thought one of the reasons I thought it'd be fun to do this, Scott, is this is your fifth time as a CFO, and I'd love to give you a moment, chat about your journey as a CFO, and maybe a little bit on how the CFO role has changed during the course of your career.
Absolutely, sure. My first CFO role actually was at Storage Networks. I joined Storage Networks in 1999, May of 1999. And the way I described Storage Networks to folks, Jack, is it was SaaS 1.0, Hype 5.0 at the time. I'd come out of EY in the Boston office and was engaged on 20 or more IPOs in the 90s, which was a great experience for me. And Storage Networks was really disrupting how companies manage and store their data, and utilizing a network to do it, a global storage network to do it. I joined the company as a controller in May of 99. The company was founded in October of 98. We went public 13 months later. I was promoted to VP of Finance in 6 months, which was great because I was a really terrible controller. I then became VP of Finance there. And, we did our IPO in June of 2000, built frankly, an irrational market cap of $13 billion. We grew the company from 25 million in revenues to 150 million in revenues in 2 years, between 2000 and 2001. And I became CFO in 2002. And I became CFO at a time when it was pretty challenging. The dot-com bubble had burst, and we serviced a lot of companies that were internet companies, new internet companies whose business models weren't established yet. Technology wasn't really there yet. Frankly, we hadn't developed our technology. We'd only been around for 3 years. So our revenues declined to 94 million and then 35 million. So we had a massive run up on the way up, hired 1,000 people in 2.5 years, grew the company to 150 million in revenues in 3 years, but had just as hard of a trip down. So I became CFO. I was thrown in the hot seat. Talk about being in a hot seat. I was 30 years old and been given the reins of CFO of a company that was looking to really survive that period of time. And I'm happy to say and thrilled to say we had a great outcome. It was a lot of pain and challenges along the way, but it was a great outcome in that we were able to get the company to a soft landing. We didn't bankrupt the business. We had a lot of cash, and we were able to get the engineers and employees safely landed at Rocket Software. So terrific learning experience for me.
Yeah, and that's actually where we met through. I think we were both members of the HTFEN in the late 90s.
Exactly. Yep.
There were
exactly.
Youngish CFOs at the time, so I remembered a lot of that. Unfortunately, the company I was with didn't have quite the happy ending that you guys did.
The story it was a company life cycle. Really, we had an incredible run up to the IPO and beyond, and built a great market cap, and then an incredible run down. Frankly, when we lost so many customers and investors became impatient on the timeframes that we had laid out. So it was a nice ending, at least. I don't know if I'd say it was a great ending, but it was a good ending for the folks that had built that software. I think software still exists today. I then took some time off because I had to lick my wounds for the sleepless nights I slept in my office before joining a company called Archivus, which was another company that was revolutionizing and disrupting really how companies store data. It was way ahead of its time, Jack. It was a cloud company. And you've heard of those companies like AWS and Amazon Azure.
Didn't hear about too many of those in 2003 or so.
Yeah, there weren't. And frankly, we were. I was only there a couple of years. We were approached by Hitachi, who was a partner of ours, a channel partner of ours, about an acquisition, and we had to make a really strategic decision at the time. We talked the then founder and also the CEO and I got together with our board and really had an honest conversation about the time frame that it was going to take, for the technology to really be mature enough and adopted widely. Sometimes there's always a time and place. You have to be at the right time in the right place. You have a great technology, but you also have to be at the right time in the right place. Great people, great technologies, and a great market are important. But if you don't time it right, or if you're unable to, then it can be a challenge. And so we ended up taking the offer, which was a good outcome for the company. We were acquired by Hitachi back in 2006. And you think about how early cloud was back then. Azure, nobody knew. Azure didn't even exist for Microsoft in 2006. But it was a really interesting time and an interesting challenge for us to really weigh those options. Do we want to do this for 10 years and hope that there's a market there in 10 years and invest significant amounts of money in this, or do we want to take this great offer that we had from Hitachi and ended up doing the latter?
Yeah, how patient are your investors going to be, right? There might be a wonderful payoff in 10 years.
Yeah, great story about that at Workhuman. I'll share that with you when we get to Workhuman.
Hey, I hate to interrupt you, but being the worst host in the history of LinkedIn Live, I did forget to remind people, if you do want to ask Scott any questions, you can put them in the comments box of the video, and I will see them in real time and can read them to you. And as I said, he's one of the best CFOs I know, and I know a lot of CFOs. So great opportunity to pick his brain a little bit. And what do you charge? $50 a question is what we agreed?
No, not even. This one's free because it's Jack. It's free. This is a freebie today.
What a guy! Cool. Anyway, so why don't you tell us a little? Was the next one Demandware? If I recall,
the next one's Demandware. I did a couple of projects with some venture firms as I was looking for my next thing, and then had the opportunity to join Demandware, which I just, when I heard the story, I just fell in love with it. The interesting thing about the story, before I give you why I fell in love with it, was I actually accepted the role in August of 2008. I was helping Sigmund Charles River sell a company and ended up formally joining in October. And in between that was a little month called September of 2008, which was the demise of the economy, effectively. So that was a challenge in itself. I had, Storage Networks was a huge run up when the economy was booming, and then a huge run down when it wasn't. And Demandware was kind of the opposite. I started during the recession, at a time where the consumer was hurt the most. And Demandware, for those who don't know, was a cloud-based commerce platform servicing retailers and branded manufacturers. And the reason why I love the story and I love the company is really threefold. One was, and it's hard to think now, you talk about us being veterans. I think you said old, but I like to say veterans. E-commerce was not a big thing in 2008. It really wasn't. It was a big thing for pure play commerce companies, but not for retailers and branded manufacturers, right? If you think about retailers in 2008, they still expected consumers to come into the store. And they had websites and commerce websites, but they were really, second inventory levels, not the most strategic. And branded manufacturers didn't even necessarily sell to consumers directly. They didn't want to compete with their channels. So, companies like Adidas, who was one of our largest customers, by the time I left Demandware, didn't really sell direct to consumer back in 2008. They didn't want to compete with Finish Line or Dick's Sporting Goods or Sports Authority, right? Those were their channels. And then the second was mission critical. Like SaaS was certainly becoming I think Salesforce went public in 2004. And they were really mid-market SMB, which is crazy to think today, right? But they were. Nobody thought they could compete with Siebel in the enterprise for CRM, and now they're one of the biggest software companies in the world. So Demandware had the combination of disrupting, this retail and direct consumer market at the same time with a mission-critical SaaS platform. And very few mission-critical SaaS platforms existed back then. SaaS platforms like, say, a Concur or something like that. That's a great technology, but I always say when Concur goes down or is down for maintenance, not that big of a deal. You can book your expense report another time. If Demandware is down, our customers can't sell to their consumers.
Yeah, that's real mission critical stuff. I mean, no, we live in a world where we're very impatient, right? If Concur goes down for 11 seconds, they're going to annoy some people. But it's despite what we think, it's not the end of the world. So.
No, but it is for our customers. We had for a customer to take the leap of taking their software on-prem behind the firewall that they custom built and then, get rid of that and utilize a SaaS platform to go to market and have an omnichannel experience was challenging. That being said, once we got out of the recession, and there was a period of time for 12 months where I wasn't sure we were going to get out of that. When I talk about Demandware to folks that know the story, they just think about how great that ending was and how great the story was along the way. But that first year was pretty challenging. I joke around with our old investors, the VC investors who are very loyal and patient, Larry and Michael at GC and Northbridge, that, it was rough going. And if you talked to them and gave them truth serum and said in 2009, what do you think? Maybe it was a coin flip. But when the recession ended, and we talked about timing, when the recession ended, it was now mission critical for retailers and brand new manufacturers to have a great omnichannel experience with their consumers. And we took off. We were the only cloud play and the only cloud SaaS platform at the time to be able to do that. And so we started to really grow the business and create a lot of momentum in the market. We had a great IPO in 2012, one of the best IPOs of the year. Our roadshow was almost 30 times oversubscribed. We had a 90+% one-on-one hit rate. We had a great team. We had a great team. I had a terrific finance team, and my VP of Investor Relations was the best in the business, and we were able to tell our story. And it needed to be told a lot. We were a different story, right? When you think about SaaS, most people go to high volume, low dollars. Again, not mission critical. And here is this SaaS business, single instance, multi-tenant code-based platform selling to large retailers and enterprises that were paying us $500,000 a year. We were transactional, which is different from the traditional seat subscription model. And so we had to get out there and tell that story over and over and over again so that investors understood it. But it was such a great story and was so powerful that it was great to tell. And we performed as a result of it. So really great outcome at Demandware.
Makes sense. One of the things I want to chat, is someone with all this experience as CFOs, has the job changed in your opinion? I mean, back when I'm a little bit ahead of you on the curve, or behind you, I guess, depending upon the way you look at it. But, when my first CFO job, it was largely financial reporting. I was a really good accountant. So naturally I became the CFO of the company. Right. Yep. And you were sort of a little bit behind me in that sense. Is the job truly gotten more strategic?
It absolutely has. It absolutely has. I would say two big changes from my perspective from when I first, became a CFO and back in 2001 to where we are today, 20 years later. It was similar, right? I was a strong technical accountant when I came out of EY and took that skill set with me to Storage Networks, where I applied my reporting and financial backgrounds and dipped into FP&A. Today, it's far more, I think, twofold. Today, one of the big changes is how outward facing the role is. I've been with Workhuman for 3 months, and I'd say the majority of my time has been spent outward facing. Talking with analysts, investors, customers, prospects, you name it, just being able to, which requires you to really learn the story pretty quick.
Oh, yeah.
But I'm not doing journal entries anymore. That's just not something that, in fact, I don't think I even had a login at Demandware. It's a much more outward facing role. People are looking to the CFO as a true business partner to the CEO. And I know that gets said a lot, but it's true. It's something that, organizations organizations know that they need to have more than just one face of the company. And Eric for us is a massive face because he's the founder of the company. So he's a huge presence. But my role is to continue to amplify the story and be able to tell it not just from a numbers perspective, but from a business perspective, and then marry the two, which I think is the trick that a lot of people have trouble with. Being able to marry, here's why the business is so important, and here's the story from a financial perspective, so that you can understand how they connect together. And when I was at Storage Networks, I would tell the numbers story really well, but I struggled with the business story and how they connected, and that's certainly been a huge evolution.
Yeah, to me, that's why the position's critical, right? Unless you're the 1 in 100 companies where the CEO is a former CFO, you're probably the only financial expert on the executive team. So
Absolutely.
It's really incumbent. You understand the business as a method of telling the financial story.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So the other thing is, every CFO I talk to, or at least all of the ones that I'd consider elite, they have like a world-class controller. And that's a critical thing for you. I'm guessing you've had some great controllers over the years.
Yeah, absolutely have. I think this is one of the things that I'm proud of is the teams that I've worked with. I've worked with some just outstanding people that have gone on to have great careers. I've had, I think, 3 folks that worked with me in the past. Actually, a fourth that I've worked with in the past today was announced as a CFO of Forrester. So I'm so proud of having worked with a team of people that have gone on to have great careers and great careers post as CFOs. But no, that it is critically important. I tell people particularly when you're going to go into the public markets, you need to have a world-class controller and a world-class head of FP&A, and a world-class VP of IR. I think those are three things, and then build the teams from there, because they'll then build world-class teams themselves. No question about it. You have to have that combination in place. No question.
It's interesting you said that. One of them, I won't say who because I don't have permission to use her name, but I'm sure you know her. She is an HTFianer like you, and she talks about the former controllers who worked for her, who have become CFOs during the course of her career. And I won't say she boasts, but she's taking pride the way HBS talks about its alumni, right? It's like, this one's a CFO there, that one's a CFO there. And it's a great thing to see. I mean, you hire extremely talented people, you make them, you give them the skills so that they can become a CFO at the next gig. And, you've got a short window, right?
It's a thing, Jack, it's a thing I'm most proud of in my career. When you say boast, whether it's boast or not, it's what I'm most proud of, because my belief, look, I was thrown into the fire early in my career and supported, and it led my belief that you need to hire great people that complement what you do, and then empower them, and give them accountability. Like that's how I lead all my organizations. And so when I see folks actually take that initiative and feel like they're being appreciated for what they do, and know that their work is meaningful, and that they're developing, and they take charge and end up advancing their career, I take personal pride in that. It's something that it's a collaborative effort, but it's certainly something that I'm most proud of in my career is the folks that I've worked with that have gone on to have great success stories.
That's great. Hey, one of the things I know you're new to Workhuman. In hot economy, you've got a great brand as a CFO goes. Why'd you pick it? Tell us a little about that decision and what's, I know beforehand how excited you are to be there.
Yeah. It is a great story. And when I was introduced to the company, as I had mentioned, I'd never heard of the story before. But I'll be honest, to me, I turned 50 this year, and I've worked with some great companies. And typically when I look at companies, I want to look at disruptive technology, something that's really disrupting legacy. I mean, at the end of the day, legacy technologies get disrupted, and then new technologies get disrupted because they become legacy. It's just the way of the world, and innovation drives that. So I tend to always look for that. But I also, when I was looking at Workhuman, feel like I want to do something bigger. There's got to be something, more than just a disruptive technology in my career, and Workhuman was founded 20 years ago by Eric Mosley in Dublin. And he founded the company simply because he wanted to make work more human. It's how the company got its name. And what he meant by that was he wanted employees to feel appreciated, to feel like their work was meaningful, to feel like they had a purpose, to bring their whole selves to work. And, it's 20 years ago. And at the time, something like that seems like it might be, I've had some analysts say soft, but it's incredible how impactful it's been over the last 20 years. And what the company has done, which I admire, and you talked about patience, is over the last 20 years, continue to just run the business in a way in which our customers were truly seeing benefit from our software, from our platform. And they do that by seeing truly engaged employees. When employees are more engaged, they're more productive. When employees are more engaged, they're less likely to leave. And when employees are more engaged, they bring their whole selves to work. And it's a win. It truly is a win-win, where the company is receiving better productivity, more engagement, more profitability because of their more engaged employees, and the employees are happier, and they're fulfilled. And so when I heard that side of the story, to me it was meaningful. And then when I dug in and saw the technology and how disruptive it was, there are 6 million employees using our software today. 5.5 million using our software. 6 million employees across our customer base that are using our software today. We've recorded more than 50 million moments of recognition that we've been able to take from a data perspective, and through artificial intelligence and machine learning, provide real information back to our customers about the impact. For example, employees that receive 5 or more recognition moments in a year are 32% more productive. And They are, and 4 more recognition moments are, for employees who receive 4 more recognition moments, they're 2 times less likely to leave. And the reason why that's so important is, the company was founded as a mission-driven company, and Eric is maniacally focused on ensuring that our software provides a great employee experience. Like, it was an employee experience mission, but at the same time, it's $1 trillion problem today to solve employee engagement and employee retention. It's a $500 billion.
It costs, that's the value of your stock options, right?
Yeah, we'll get there.
Yeah,
no, but it's a $500 million. It's a $500 million problem today. Gallup studies will show that only 1/3 of U.S. employees are truly engaged in their work, meaning 2/3 of U.S. employees are not truly engaged, and therefore leaving productivity on the table. And multiple polls will show that the cost of losing an employee is between 25% and 150% of the base salary of that employee. And just the loss in the cost of that employee. And when you look at where we are today, and that's a $600 billion challenge for U.S. companies today. So an employee is more engaged, they're more productive, and they stay with companies longer. So companies, our customers expand because they see that the more they invest in social recognition, which is what we do, the more their employees are engaged and the better it is for them on ROI. So it's truly an awesome story about employee engagement and company ROI.
Yeah, that's fantastic. And you actually anticipated a couple of my questions, but we'll get to them. But one thing before we get into, the specifics of it, one of the most popular programs we do at the CFO Leadership Council is the first 90 days.
Yes.
And you're a 5-time CFO, which means you've had 5 first 90 days in that role, and you're still in the first 90 days, right?
I am.
Something like that. You want to tell us, sort of what are the things you want to accomplish, not only for yourself, but for the company? And I kind of equate it to 90 days is roughly the length of time of a college semester. So yes, I kind of equate it to good learning. Turns out academics know what they're doing, right? But it's a great learning opportunity, 90 days. You're a CFO, you want to do stuff. On the other hand, fight the urge to solve every problem immediately and, build alliances and meet people. But why don't you share some of the things you're going through?
Yeah, and it's interesting. The first 90 days. There's books about what to do in the first 90 days, and in my 5 different stints as a CFO, they've all been different. And I think it's important to understand what you're walking into going in. Which makes them different. At Nasuni, which was my last company, we were building. I took a different role at that company as COO and CFO. The company I joined was 50 people maybe, and about 2 million of ARR, and we grew the business to about 70 million before I left in ARR. And that was about building a team. Like, I knew going in that was going to be about building a team, multiple teams. I started organizations. I knew that we needed a customer success organization, so we started that, and we needed a product strategy organization, and we started that. At Workhuman, it's different. We're an 800-person company. Global company with employees in Ireland and in the US. I have 45 people that I'm responsible for in Dublin. So going in, knowing that it wasn't about building a team here, it was about nurturing a team for sure, and it was about understanding where we are and building on that. Here, the most important thing for me was to learn. I listened. I listened to the folks that were on the finance team. I listened to folks that were my peers on the executive team, really listening and really absorbing that and understanding, how my role here was different than my role was at Nasuni, as a more mature company that last year our net revenues were $220 million, approximately $220 million. So we had, a much bigger from a scale perspective than Nasuni, right? And that presents different challenges. So my first 90 days were really about listening to the story, understanding what the challenges were so that we could attack those head on, as opposed to something that was, a build up perspective like it was at Nasuni.
Cool. Okay. That's fantastic. So just a reminder to anyone listening in, you can type in your questions. We don't have any questions, but Holly Hazelton says it was a great conversation. And Walter Green thought that I asked a great question about the first 90 days. And those are probably 2 of the smartest people I've ever met in my life. So.
Terrific. That's great.
Yeah. But anyway, you addressed it a little bit, but I'd love to expand on it if we could. So can you sort of explain the business case for creating a more human workplace? Obviously happy, engaged employees, but, above and beyond that.
Yeah, absolutely. So, Again, when Eric founded the company, his mission was simple, which was to create a more human workplace, and he wanted employees to feel appreciated. But then over time, what we developed was we've got three parts of our cloud, our Workhuman cloud. What we call social recognition platform, or human applications. And Jack, when you think about, we solve a human resources problem. So when you think about human capital management companies, or companies that are in the human capital management space, they're typically process applications in which they're administrative applications solving process problems, right? Like recruiting management or payroll, right? We're a very different company in that we're a human application that solves a human problem. And what we've built is an application that's crowdsourced and peer-to-peer recognition amongst employees in the company. Anybody can recognize anybody for anything, but the key thing is that they're recognizing employees for demonstrating or aligning with company goals and objectives. So it truly is a win-win, right? The business case that we present to our customers are, if you've got employees that are engaged, more engaged than they were before, you're going to be a better company as a result of it. The employee is going to be a happier employee, but you're going to be a better company. And the way you're going to be a better company is in three ways. The first way is you're going to see improved engagement. And we can demonstrate that with data. We built our Workhuman cloud, Workhuman IQ, as part of our Workhuman cloud, to collect this data, to collect the 50 plus million moments of recognition, and to be able to show that the frequency of recognition increases engagement. And we've been able to apply that to productivity. For example, you and I came from the billable world of billable hours. And we've been able to demonstrate to customers in industries like that if they increase the number of recognition moments for those teams, they end up seeing better productivity, more billable hours, because they're collaborating more. It makes sense. But with our data, we're able to show that. Mm-hmm. And then the second is through retention, which again, that's that other $600 billion problem. Customers that are Workhuman customers with employees that receive more recognition are lower turnover. And that's a true ROI. As a CFO, I hit that head on when I got here, Jack. I mean, I saw this as a way to say, look, if we could just reduce turnover at a company by 20%, we could save them money in what they invest in a recognition program. A company that's got 10,000 employees, for example, if they reduce their employee turnover by 20%, they can save $8 million on turnover costs. And we encourage our customers to allocate 1% of their payroll to social recognition. And if they do that, they're spending, in that case, probably about $5 million. And they've got a first-year ROI. It's a first-year ROI. And then the third, we're in a crazy time, right? I mean, the last couple of years, here, I'm in my office, but I'm not in every day, right? And most people are still distributed. The ability to stay connected with employees has never been a bigger challenge for companies today, because they're not home and because they're at home, they're not in the office. And when they do go back to the office, they're not going to be in the office every day. So the importance of connection and the importance of engagement is more important now than ever. The importance of creating, creating environment which focuses and emphasizes diversity and equity and inclusion is more important today than ever. And when you think of legacy employee recognition programs, Jack, they're very tactical, they're hierarchical. It's spot bonus programs. It's programs like that where
they're not just be cash. You did a good job. Here's $50 or something.
Hey, $50. Right? Here's $1,000, whatever it is. But that's the key: is that they're not strategic. They don't align employees with company goals and objectives. They're not. They're inequitable, right? Because they're random. And you can't track it. You can't really understand or recognize whether or not it's improving engagement. And data has shown that that non-cash monetary awards are 8 times more effective than cash bonuses for increasing engagement, right? It's as simple as that. But we're at a time right now where businesses are struggling with hiring and training and retaining employees. 50% of the U.S. workforce are millennials who want that flexibility in their lives. They want to be able to work from wherever. They also want to know that their work is meaningful. They want that. They want to make sure that they're being recognized frequently and appreciated for the work that they're delivering. And so we're a platform that offers that. So not only do we provide something back to the employee in terms of a great employee engagement experience, we provide that ROI that's tangible, and we're also building culture at a time when culture is most important. It's just a great, again, from a period of from a secular trend perspective, it's a really great time to be at Workhuman.
Yeah, no, it makes sense. And, since you talked about the millennials, but, Gen Z's beginning to enter the workforce. And it won't be long before they're the biggest generation in the workforce.
Right.
I'm a boomer. And, as a boomer, we probably rule things a little bit longer than we should have. But nonetheless, that's the way it was. I mean, we sort of called the shots for so long.
Sure.
And, now Gen Z will soon be the biggest as more and more of us begin to leave. And we are getting a couple of questions. Do you want me to? I'm fine on time. Are you? We can take them.
Yeah, perfect. Okay. Absolutely. Happy to.
So the first one is from James Metzger, and former Bostonian. I don't know if you know him, but James asks, having been a CFO at numerous companies, can you talk about the different types of CEOs and how you learn to work with different leaders and different investors? I'm going to guess he's asking you. So
okay, sure. Yeah. So I mean, I think. Well, in my view, there are three types of CEOs, and frankly, there's also a crossover. But there's CEOs that are sales oriented, sales and marketing oriented, product oriented, and operational CEOs who may also have a finance background. I've worked with all three in my 5 companies, so I've got experience with all of them. I will say, they're just different. I wouldn't say that they're necessarily one is better than the other. To me, what I look for in a CEO who's someone who recognizes someone else's talents and abilities, right? Whether it's a product CEO that sees a CFO as strategic to them because of what I can offer to the table operationally. If it's an operational CEO who I've got a very similar background to, then maybe it's something that I can complement for he or she in their role. Go-to-market CEOs tend to be more aggressive. Which is fine. So as in my past as a CFO, I've tried to balance that. I happen to be a fairly aggressive CFO. I love, I don't say I love failure, but I'm not afraid of failure. I actually think failure is a good thing as long as you're learning from it and you fail fast. Working with a sales and marketing oriented CEO, I understand that maybe there's a yang to his yin that I can pull back on, understanding they're going to be more aggressive. Product CEOs tend to be more conservative. And in my role as a CFO, I can potentially push that and say, are there ways that we can potentially maybe invest a little bit more for growth and put some more investments at play? That might be something that, as a product CEO, they may be more resistant to do. So I find that's again being in this for 20 years and having worked with all 3 types, it's just interesting, and I know going in potentially what those challenges are going to be.
Okay, interesting. We are back live with Scott. Apologize for that little blip, people, but thanks for hanging in there. Thanks. Sorry for my technical difficulties, Scott, but thanks for being flexible for me.
No worries. Thanks for continuing the conversation. I've enjoyed it.
No, glad to do it. But one of the things that I didn't get to in both, working for a company like Workhuman and as an executive at the company who's very focused on your own team, how do you think, or why do you think it's important that bringing humanity at work be done from the top down, but it's actually an executive initiative?
Right. Yeah. So I think it's incredibly important, particularly as it relates to what we do for social recognition, because the difference between, or the evolution of the disruption that we are bringing to market with social recognition as opposed to legacy employee recognition is truly on aligning employees with company culture and company goals and objectives and values. So, for example, when a customer is looking at, in fact, like a LinkedIn, who's a customer, is looking to not only improve their culture, but also to ensure that employees in a period of rapid growth are aligned with principles and values and objectives, and having a social recognition platform that employees can recognize employees for contributing to those values aligns the company objectives with the employees' actions. And that's something that's very unique. And you don't get that connection, you don't get that dynamic from legacy recognition. So that needs to come from the top down. Is the C-level suite is driving down to the employee base. Hey, this is what we want to do. We want you to, these are our goals and objectives. This is what we're trying to accomplish as a company, and employees are maniacally focused on it. Give you an example, Jack. We can recognize, or we can identify with our data where recognition moments are happening in pockets of a company, where those work streams are flowing. So, for example, if there's a lot of recognition moments that are happening between a product team and an R&D team, we can identify that, provide that data back to our customers, and they'll be able to see that these product teams and these engineering teams are collaborating together, recognizing each other for a common purpose, which is to get great product to market, which is a goal and objective of the company. So it's really good to be able to identify that and have that come from the top down and make sure that that's reinforced throughout the organization.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense, actually. And I'm going to close my door. We can't do this.
No worries at all.
Jesus, it's normally as quiet as a church around here.
It's all about agility and adaptability, Jack.
Yeah, they must have just raised some money or something, because they're all in a pretty good mood. So, but that makes sense. Anyway, we'll pick up in a moment. I'll count backwards to 5 in my head.
Okay.
5, 4, 2, 1. Okay. That's great, Scott. And, I'm also curious, again, how can people in your position sort of become the advocates for the more human workplaces? And, the biggest challenge when I talk to CFOs and other executives is hiring and retaining. Even during a pandemic, it was almost impossible to keep your team. Nothing seems to be slowing it down, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think the sign of a great leader is empowerment of your people. And understanding and making sure that they understand what they're doing is meaningful. Like, to me, that's always been the case, regardless of whether there's recognition moments that are programmatic and strategic, like ours are, or if you're just leading an individual. So, someone in my role, for example, I truly believe that every person within the organization plays a huge role. There's I never say that that so-and-so worked for me. I always say so-and-so worked with me. It's a conscious thing for me as a CFO to make sure people understand that we're all a team together and that everybody's work is contributing to a common goal, and should be appreciated, and it should be respected, and their values and their voices should be heard, which is why we focus on crowdsource peer-to-peer feedback within the social recognition platform. So it's about acting out the values. It's not about, you have to, it's consistent to what we just talked about, the directive from the top. It needs to come from the top. Organizations that do this right act and actually perform the way they preach, if you will. At Workhuman, we are maniacally focused on social recognition. We allocate a significant amount of payroll to the program ourselves. We're constantly recognizing people. I'll give you an example. When I got here, I didn't have. We were looking for our administrative assistant, and for me, and I didn't have. And my calendar was a mess, and somebody stepped in and said, "Let me take this over." She did a great job. She's now my EA, and I recognized her on our social recognition platform as someone who demonstrated above and beyond value.
That's fantastic.
We live that here maniacally here. It's a great part of our culture and a great part of our DNA.
Yeah, it's remarkable because, again, going back to my being a boomer, and unjustly, but we were thought of as the generation who just give them enough money and everything will be right. Yeah. That wasn't true, but enough people thought of it that, we were sort of treated that way by our elders. But yeah,
my generation too, Jack. Same thing. But you're right. The new generations, they truly want to feel like their work is meaningful, and it's more than just salary and bonus today.
Indeed, if you remember Maslow's hierarchy from undergrad or grad school, boomers were kind of on the bottom of it, but I think Gen Z, the whole self-actualization thing, that's absolutely legitimately important and within their steps. But that's great. So a couple more questions I want to ask. One is more about you than about the company, but I actually know you're on an audit committee for a public company right now. And if I have my facts correct, this is the second time you've been on a public company audit committee. And what's that like for you? Does that make you a more effective CFO, being on an audit committee?
It does. I joined my first board back in 2012 or 2013, and I joined Desktop Metal's board for the same reason, which is it makes me a better operator, better CFO. I think that when you put yourself in someone else's shoes, it makes your interactions with that person even better. If you understand where they're coming from and understanding how they're thinking. So when I'm on a board and Desktop Metal's board, I'm able to think differently about the questions that I would ask the company, the things that I would want to understand about the company, and then I can take that back in my CFO role and understand how my board is thinking, how my audit committee chair is thinking, and making sure that I'm delivering the right value, the right information, getting the right advice from them as a result of the experience that I've had on the board. So it's a terrific win-win for me. It's a fun experience. I really enjoy it, but it also brings great operational discipline back to my role as a CFO.
Yeah, well, that's the thing. Like, when Sarbanes-Oxley came along, and I don't know, 15 years ago now, maybe more than that. But, there were some opportunities for CFOs to get on boards, but only in the audit committee.
Yeah.
Because they needed financial experts. No one thought that you guys could bring more than just audit committee expertise. But the fact is, CFOs are amazing board members now. Right now, they're beyond just getting the numbers right. And by the way, that's a pretty big deal to help the CFO get the numbers right.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I mean, certainly it helps for public companies because we do have the qualifications that fill that spot. But I only joined a board. And I said this to Rick, the CEO of Desktop Metal, when I came on board. I said I only join boards that I know I can add value. And I can fill a role, but if I can add value, I'll join that board. And in looking at what was being asked of me in that role, I knew that I could add value. And so it's a win. Again, it's a win-win. I'm adding value to their board, but I'm also taking that experience back to Workhuman, where I can be a better operator here. So
that makes a lot of sense. So, cool. So Scott, I have one final question for you. A bit unfair, perhaps, since you've only been in the role for a few weeks, but what are your priorities for the company for 2022, both financially and then just overall objectives?
Yeah, well, so great question. We're sitting on a huge opportunity here, and again, the company has grown, its business really well over the past 20 years. We did almost 220 million in net revenues last year, profitable for many years. Generating 20% free cash flow margins. But for the most part, we're a North America and UK based company, and Ireland and UK based company. And the opportunity to really expand the business and invest in our go-to-market is huge. We service large customers that are 10,000 employees plus. We service customers that are in the 25 to 5,000 employee base. And now we've got companies that are 500 to 2,500 that are coming to us, and they're all coming to us because they're trying to improve the employee experience. It's all about the employee experience. So what we've got to do now is look at those opportunities and figure out where we want to invest to grow the business. It's great to be at a company at scale that's sitting in a position that we're a leader in our space that has these opportunities to really find these opportunities to invest and grow the business. So it's just important for us to make sure that we're making the right decisions based on data. I talked earlier about not being afraid to fail, but fail fast and then pivot and figure out where to go next. But we've got such a great opportunity ahead of us, and it's exciting to really work with the Workhuman team here, with Eric and the team on figuring out where those investments should be made. So, yeah,
I never talk politics in my professional life, but as James Carville once said, it's the people, stupid. It sounds like exactly your philosophy. I've been told I look like him. I don't see it other than one of us has much hair. But anyway, Scott, before we go, do you want to just give the website to your company in case people want to look it up?
Sure. It's www.workhuman.com. And yeah, I'm happy to answer any other questions that people have along the way. If it comes up, feel free to reach out.
Okay. Well, that sounds great. Scott, thanks again for your time and more so for your patience with our technical issues.
No worries. Thank you, Jack. Appreciate it.